That was Byrd's In Nomine in 4 parts. There are 2 Byrd In Nomines in 4 parts, and that was the first one. And we're going to talk a little bit about consort playing in general and how we might, how you might do it, how we've done it for the last 35 years, and how you might do it in future. A lot of consort playing is instinctive, but it's important to think about the elements that take part of consort playing. The first thing to say about this music, and of course old music is different, but this music and 16th century viol consort music in particular is very vocal in conception. The 4 parts here could easily be labelled cantus, altus, tenor, bassus. In fact, they may well have been in the original sources. And there's a big overlap between the music that can be sung and music and played in the 16th century. So when it comes to playing the lines of this In Nomine, I'm playing the bass part here, obviously, that phrases like that, one's looking for a very legato, vocal way of playing it, so that the notes are really joined together. But also what we're hoping to achieve is some sort of shape to the line as well. And the most difficult thing for viol players, I think, of all, is achieving an equal weight to the various different valued notes through the weight of the bow, and particularly the bow speed. So in this instance, we have a semi-breve, a dotted semi-breve, and a minim, and then a breve. So all notes of different note value, different lengths, and yet we want them all to sound broadly similar in their weight, and then add a shape to that as well. So the bow speed is very important. The bow speed has got to slow down slightly for the longer notes and speed up slightly for the faster notes. But that must be done relatively within a relative small band. Because if I speed it up too much, if I increase the bow speed too much, then the notes with the faster bow speed will stick out, and that's what I don't want.
So I'll be playing the In Nomine line. So the things that I'll be particularly thinking about for playing this line is still making a shape. So even though the note values are very long, I can still make the shape by looking at the tessitura, particularly later on when I have the highest point. I really like to focus on getting it very smooth, and so it really can soar out of the texture there. That's a very nice moment. And there's one moment where it has a semitone between the notes. Again, something to really bring out of the texture. And even though I'm on the In Nomine line, it's important not to kind of switch off. You know, you still can contribute a lot to the sound of the ensemble in the various sections of the piece. So you still have the control and the need to soften the sound slightly, or even soften the way you start a note, just to try and match with what's going on. And the thing to particularly think about is when you want to be sort of nestled into the texture, and then the moments when there's some suspension or some change in the music that you want to bring out, and then to really sink down with the bow so that you really pop out of the texture and draw attention to yourself.
So I'll just say something about the different points. The way the first half of this piece works particularly is that different themes emerge, and we copy each other, coming in one after the other. The first one, Richard's talked about a little bit. It has a big shape, and it has a scale that comes down, and it might be good to follow the tessitura in terms of the dynamic. So coming away at the end, and that also has the added benefit of allowing the next person who comes in to come through the texture. So humming away and making a slightly more transparent sound on those last notes is one way to shape that. Then later on we get things that are a little bit more lively, and it's good to look out for bigger intervals and shorter note values. Is one that comes later on. So I might lift those notes a little bit more to give that a little bit more of a dance-like feel. And just paying attention as well to the very small notes, making sure they definitely don't get too much bow because they're really ornamental. So those ones, just tiny little movements with the fingers there to make the quavers, so they don't stick out too much, but they just they're integrated into the line. And the point that comes after that is one that goes minim, semi-breve, minim, semi-breve, minim, semi-breve, which adds up to something a bit more like triple time. Worth noticing that, and it's hard to see when we're playing from parts with bar lines, but it could be that the minims become a little bit lifted, creating a bit of a triple time feel. Like that. And the other thing to say about articulation and bowing is to look out for notes that are tied across bar lines, or that feel like they're going across the beat if you haven't got bar lines. They could very well be suspensions, and you're going to really want to not let go of those notes too much. So I have one that goes, and halfway through that first note Richard plays a dissonance. Do you know that's bar 27? Could we just play the second half of bar 26?
Yeah.
And then bar 27 you hear that. Yeah. So you can hear that tension that you need in the bow. That comes from slowing down and put more weight into the bow in the suspension and then releasing. Which way? That way. And the release that comes afterwards is just as important as the tension on that dissonance.
I think it's worth pointing out, as Em was saying, that no consort music in the 16th until the middle of the 17th century, the parts never had bar lines. I don't think there's a single occasion when the wild consort parts had bar lines. So in manuscripts you frequently find little signs for rehearsal marks, so that they didn't have to go back if they got lost, which I'm sure they did, just as we do, that they didn't have to go back to the beginning of the piece and start all over again. But the fact that there are no bar lines changes the way you look at the music entirely. And as Em was saying about triple time groupings, those would leap out at you on the page, and you wouldn't have these ties going across the bar lines to break it up. All together, in original manuscripts, you see the notes first of all squashed much more closely together, and it makes you think of the lines being much more vocal, much more legato than broken up with the bar lines that are there. One other subject I think is worth speaking about is a blend, and how you achieve a blend in consort music. Sometimes you don't want a blend. Sometimes you want to have the individual players and the individual lines to be distinct, to be separate and different. And sometimes you may want them to be the same. And when you want something the same, you need to achieve very similar bow speeds in the whole consort. And just the place where we were demonstrating before, you hear that blend of sound because of the harmonic dissonance of one part against the others. And if the consort can achieve a similar bow speed at that moment, then you get a sort of magnetic pulling together of the parts, which produces a particular sound. If we go from bar 26, and we'll if you see the second part of the dissonance, I hope we'll achieve a blend that I'm talking about. Thank you. And the other place where you might hear a good blend is in the very end, the last chord. If we play the last two bars, and when the chord settles and the dissonance is resolved, you should hear the parts come together into a single sound. Last two bars. And what we're aiming for there is the sound of the final chord to diminuendo together. You notice almost all of us are on a back bow there, so we can lighten the bow as the chord goes along, and eventually the diminuendo to nothing. And it all comes from feeling the bow speeds together, hearing the sound, changing the pressure of the weight of the bow on the string as you hear the sounds from other people. So reacting to what you hear.
Another place that could apply is in bar 45, 46, 47, you'll hear we move into the major, and it might be that we all choose to have a slightly different tone colour there, so a little bit of a lighter bow and a faster bow. If we do that collectively, we can collectively make a different colour there, and then as it goes back into the minor and it is more dissonant, we can slow our bows down and become stronger again. So perhaps if we play from 44 until about 51, you'll hear that? Yeah. You can hear the In Nomine line really leading that in the move into that intensity as well.
So there's all these things to think about to do with bow speed and weight and where you are, and how you're producing the sound. But don't lose sight of the one of the best ways to learn, and one of the things that consort music is such a gift for, is just to listen to your colleagues, to what's going on around you, and then you will just think, oh yeah, I really like the way someone did that line, or I'm going to try and copy the way they did that bit of phrasing, or when it's my turn, I'm going to match that sound that I'm hearing. And so if you have a combination of a good analytical sense of how much bow you're using and what you're doing, but keep your ears really open so that you can keep responding as well just to what you're hearing and what you're enjoying.